if you could just wish for anything, uh, you know, why would you wish for money? Why would you wish for kind of these stepping stones on the way to what you actually want? And I feel like that is the human experience. That's our suffering, right? We say, as we've talked about in the past, hey, if you get all this money, then you can buy a car. Then you can go save the world. Then you can go paint. Then you can go DJ. But the reality is, you have to do those things now, and then maybe the future will come. But more importantly, it doesn't matter, right? Because now you've attained what you actually were seeking after that was going to bring you happiness. Um, I think similarly, what we sometimes lose sight of, I think, especially when it comes to burnout, I've dealt with burnout in the past, and I felt like it was a fitting topic given that it's Sunday scaries that people deal with, is reminding ourselves of the end outcome, why we work. So that sometimes helps me. It's like, okay, this week I'm going to be working. There's reasons why I work, of course, to build wealth, to provide a good home for my family, to pursue my hobbies on the weekends, to live a little more comfortably. So these are all the things that work offers me. My jobs to be done is a way that they talk about it in marketing. What is the actual thing people are looking to do? Um, so I thought it would be an interesting conversation today to focus on maybe some unconventional ways to deal with burnout. I think there's a lot of advice you see out there, and everything, things work differently for different people. But I think you and I might have some interesting takes on how to actually deal with it.
Yeah, it's a very real thing. I've been dealing with burnout myself since I moved to the Chicago area, and I've been thinking about how to take care of myself. I like the idea that when you have a pet, you'll give them the medication, you'll give them their food, you'll take them to the vet, you'll make sure that they're going out 3 times a day, you'll make sure that they're going on walks, that they're not sick, that they're groomed well. But do you do that for yourself? Do you go to the doctor once or twice a year? Do you go to the dentist twice a year? Do you take your medication? Do you take care of yourself as if you were your own child, as if you were your own pet? And burnout is one of those things that will sneak up on you because if you neglect yourself, you pretend like "Hmm, nothing's really happening." You'll stop listening to your emotions, to your body, and you'll try to work through it. And there's this dogma that's been, pushed down upon most, let's say, Western men and also Eastern as well. Like I would say, most men across the world have been pushed this idea of feeling your feelings is bad. Feeling what your body feels is bad. When you come from home from work, if you're not in pain, well, you didn't work hard enough. But burnout is one of those things that you have to listen to your body to avoid. And you have to work with your body to overcome it once it does happen. I like this one study by, I think it's a Harvard group, but I honestly don't know. There's a study that if you smile for 30 seconds, you will suddenly start to feel happy. I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's not just smiling. If you act like you're happy, if you have a skip to your step, if you start talking as if you were a happy person, if you start acting like a happy person, your external reality will start to reflect your internal reality. It's not just the in pushing out. There's also the out pushing in. So if you're always thinking depressive thoughts, yeah, your body will reflect that. You'll start to slouch. Your eyes will start to get more droopy. Maybe you'll be less fun. You'll start to act more lethargic. And these are the physical symptoms that you start to see. And when you're burning out, these are the things that start to happen. You start to get kind of depressed and stressed out, and you don't want to work anymore. You're fatigued. You have memory fog. But if you start to act happy, even for a few, couple minutes a day, it'll start to kick in, and you'll start to reap the benefits of actually being happy because your biology can override your software at some level.
Interesting. Um, yeah. So there was a time in my life where I was pretty depressed. And I don't know where I picked it up, possibly a similar study, but I was basically told to like, when I wake up, go to the mirror, smile, and give myself a high five. And I thought it was just the most bizarre, corny thing. But I'm also a sucker for corny things. So I gave it a shot and it actually helped me. Within 2 weeks, I started feeling more positive. I was standing up more straight, and it really, strangely enough, had this like huge impact on me. So I definitely think there's something about it. You're like almost hacking your brain to understand that, hey, like, I want to generate happy feelings. And I think that's a lot of what this is about too. It's about intentionality. So the importance of recognizing the signs. You can't fight burnout unless you know that you are burnt out. And some of those signs, I think, yeah, most of them are actually in our body versus like sometimes your mind is telling you, but by then it's usually too late. It's almost like once you know you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So similarly, I think you have to really listen to your body and say, okay, am I, getting tired? Am I like do I feel stress? Am I like for me, it's like biting fingernails and stuff like that. Those kinds of things show that I'm being anxious. And from that, I can start to peel back. Hey, there's something's weighing on me because there are certain behaviors I notice almost every time that I'm actually burnt out. I take this approach of always on mind. So always back on my LinkedIn, always thinking about work problems, never like focused on, hey, what do I want to do outside of work? What are all my other hobbies? They start to fall under this like almost like they have to be explored only in the weekend. My mind isn't allowed to think about anything but work during the week. I play like these black and white games with myself, and that's never fun. Um, but once you recognize the signs, then you can start kind of taking action. And to me, the action with burnout, like I think it's a little contradictory to what people say. I sometimes believe in drastic action. Like booking the trip to Belgium to me was just like, yeah, I need some time to think. And even though I'm not like burnt out right now, I know that like this will proactively kind of stop the signs, right? So it's like, okay, a little more relaxed. I give my body somewhat of a eustress is what I'd call it. It's not like it's just easy to travel, right? You usually have to deal with time changes and all that, and put your body under some level of duress, but it's interesting experience. So it's like worth it. But yeah, I think burnout, what it does is it tricks our brain into thinking that like all of a sudden like very narrow minded. It's like, hey, yeah, work is everything. You're competing on this ladder. It like puts you in the survivalist instinct and takes you out of the game and the fun of life, really. So I think for me, like, and I've seen it in others too, is just taking a step back and saying, okay, why am I working? This is all to serve me as a human, and my work is my passion. Sure, that's great. Well, then let's skip to the part of what is the outcome of that work, not the job. What is the actual outcome? Oh, if I'm a cancer researcher, it's to prevent cancer in these patients. Well, let me go do some research on that, on the people that this is affecting. If it's just as simple for me as a startup marketer, well, maybe it's the startup being successful, or the people who need this product getting it, or even simpler is me having time to spend with my family, my dog. I think there's this analogy I may have talked about before, but it's the bricklayers analogy. There was three bricklayers. The first one, when asked what he did for work, he said, I have to I have to lay these bricks. That's it. Second one says, I'm laying these bricks to build a beautiful house. It helps me feed my children and, keeps me happy. The third bricklayer said, I am laying these bricks because I want to build a wonderful house, and it's going to make someone very happy. I might be butchering it a little bit, but the idea is that third bricklayer sees the ultimate vision and the passion, which is this is going to help someone, that's going to make an impact. The second one's not bad either. The second bricklayer is saying for himself, hey, this is going to make me happy. I'm laying these bricks so I can come home. The wages are going to feed my family and make us happy. The first one is so myopically focused on building the bricks that he loses sight of everything else going on and can't see the bigger picture. So often I think when we're burnt out, that's kind of the problem we face.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating analogy you gave there. I think it's really important for us to celebrate the small victories as well along the way, and just acknowledge that, you know, you are not entirely your work, and your work does have a greater purpose. And as I've been going through burnout, I've been trying to really acknowledge my worth and my small victories. I work out every day in the mornings, and I've been trying this new science-based approach called long length partials, which you and I have spoken about offline. And this weekend, I did a tricep workout, and I looked at my mirror, and I noticed the new bump that I'd never seen before. And I and it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, wait, I didn't even know that was possible. Like that you could have a bump there. That and I think maybe it's because I got a pump or something, but it shocked me. I was like, wow, okay, I'm making progress. Good things are coming out of um my what I want. Like I've been trying to pursue something and it's coming to fruition. And it's it's really easy to lose sight of the things that you want when you're so focused on I am this employee and this thing. But if you have a family, if you have you know fitness goals, diet goals, whatever it is, goals outside of your work, it's important to just ask yourself like, why am I doing this? Is this something that I do because I think it's fun, because it's making me happy? But just along the way, celebrate those goals. And I think it's important for us to define burnout because we've been using this word kind of loosely and uh, almost as if everyone knows what burnout is, because burnout is something you experience, then you know what it is. And I think the first time I heard about burnout, I actually uh, it was when I started my PhD program, and someone was talking about it, and they were saying ways to avoid burnout, and I already knew what it was because I had experienced it. But how would you tell someone who has never felt burnout what burnout is?
I looked it up. So I'm going to first read the definition. I'm cheating. An exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. I think that's a pretty dang good definition, actually. But if I was to simplify it and explain it to a 7-year-old, I would say it's when people get tired.
I think that's accurate. When people get tired,
Yeah, people
but
get tired, something that's bothering them. I want to generalize enough for it to make sense, but
I
also
think
make more specific.
and I'm being funny when I say that you could just call it just getting tired, but I think that's essentially it. That you're just tired. I think no other creature on this planet works for a living. They just live. You know, it's like I know it's obviously a wild world out there, and you're going to survive, and there are predators, etc. If you're an animal, but it's essentially the Garden of Eden, where you can just collect whatever resources you want and need whenever you want, and you are a resource as well in the process. But if you're the top predator, you just have at it. The only thing you got to do is find it, and so there is there is no such thing as burnout. Like, what do cats and dogs do all day, right? They just lounge and they're happy. I mean, as long as they're in a good home, right? So only working has been something that is relatively new in our evolutionary lineage. In the past, maybe 10,000 years, have we started to, you know, actually work? Maybe 100,000 years ago might have been when we first started settling down. But humans are inherently nomadic creatures. We're people that want to be traveling around and gathering resources. And that kind of creates new experiences in our mind. And we're constantly refreshing our feed, our mental feed. And those stressors don't have time to stay long term. I also think that the fact that we live for much longer time periods than uh, humans did, say hundreds of thousands of years ago, is another aspect to this. Um, and the fact that we can't just take breaks when we want, or at least we think we can't, is a big part of that prolonged stress. So identifying and really feeling yourself is really important. And I actually think that uh, things like, you know, hybrid working or a, a new system where you, instead of having a 5-day work week, you could have a 2-day work week that could be potentially more efficient to prevent, like say you got Wednesday off. I could see that as being way more efficient, or cutting down the amount of hours people work and just expecting them to work more efficiently. Because I don't know about you, but whenever I work on anything I've ever worked in my life, I usually am really effective within the first 3-4 hours of working on something. And then if I have a break like lunch or something and I try to come back to work on something, it's not going to be as effective. You want to rest. Uh, and so I think there's a lot of systemic issues here, but we have to come back and ask, what are the heuristics that we can take from this? What is our next best thought regarding burnout? So what do you think?
Yeah. So first off, I just want to quickly mention on the work topic. I know Cal Newport kind of explored this at length in his book Deep Work. Yeah, maybe I'm indoctrinated at this point, but to me, it's a perfect thing, right? Like we get paid to work 40 hours a week, but I don't think like uh, especially when we're burnt out, we don't realize that we're just getting paid to do the work, right? And like usually produce outcomes in a white collar job. You're not getting paid to sit there for 8 hours on your TikTok, right? Whereas a lot of us are. Some of us have productive time, some of us don't. So I think when I was working actually abroad, and I was actually working on US hours, even though I was in Europe, so it was kind of rough, but honestly, it just made me realize, right, is like, wow, I can be so much more effective in these hours. And then the rest of the time I have to explore. And I'm not taking lunches because it's like a strange time. So I'm just like working through the 6 to 8 hours, pretty productive. And then I just go eat dinner nearby or something. So the time piece of this equation, I think we're at a point where we should all feel the flexibility to do that. I know I'm saying that from a privileged standpoint, but it's something that I think is good to recognize, especially if you're working remote. It's like, yeah, you're getting paid for those 40 hours, but when those happen, I think is you're up to your discretion. How those happen is, and then also just being like kind of lenient with yourself. Like when you're burnt out, sure, you can sit there and, bang your head against the wall and just keep trying to work. But if you're not getting anything done, what's the point, right? It's like working when you're sick. Um, oh, I had another point here. Oh, and I think as we move towards the future, we're going to start living in a world that's more outcome focused. You see a lot of more fractional type of consultative roles. People aren't working full time, cashing in a 401k. So it's a new world out there. And that means as we move towards that, we're actually going to have to get better at dealing with our own burnout, because then we can come back and take the next gig, the new opportunity, in a more productive way. You had a thought there?
So you mentioned the privileged viewpoint. So that you said that, that taking breaks is and kind of working in a goal-oriented mindset is a privileged place to be. But I think a lot of people have this option where they can realize they can take breaks, or they can realize that their job is really a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, you can use that analogy to the full extent. You can't sprint for 26 miles straight unless you're that one guy who can, basically. But most people can't do that. Most people have to go at a light pace. And if your job is, you know, not necessarily task oriented, or you can't take breaks, then you have to listen to your body and try to work at a pace that you're comfortable at. That makes sense given your load. So that is I think, an approach you can take to avoid burnout. But at the same time, I'm conflicted because I think both you and I are very ambitious, and ambitious people don't like the concept of burnout. We don't want to believe in burnout. We want to just be able to go, 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 start 10 businesses and just keep going and just see our ideas come to life. But we are restricted by our biology, by our needs, by our desires, by whatever it may be. And we try to hack and game the system, and we come up with heuristics on how to just min max our life. But when it comes to burnout, that is our literal biology telling us, hey, you have to slow down. You're going too fast. I can't breathe. I can't, I'm sweating too much. You were sprinting towards something. And this reminds me of a graffiti that I saw in Ibiza, which was the first city I visited in my world tour. And the sign said, why am I running if I don't know where I'm going? The graffiti. So if your body is out of breath, if you're sprinting all the time, you're burning out. Why are you running if you don't know where you're going? So ask yourself, where am I going? Why am I running? Am I running towards something, away from something? I know these are all analogies, but I think, and human beings are good at analogies. That's how we've learned to communicate through these ways. That's why burnout is something that you don't necessarily have to look up. We're good at understanding concepts like this. And I don't say that to derail, but to show that even the concept of burnout, which is an abstraction, can be related to something like sprinting. Slow down, listen to your body, and you can still finish the marathon. That's still a great achievement. And reward yourself for these things. Say, I'm proud of myself. I did this. I accomplished this task that I thought was unbelievable. And I didn't have to uh, do it all at once. I I have my own hobbies, like I like to juggle. And when people see me juggling, they're like, wow, you're such a pro. You do this, you must do this every day or something like that. No, I did it over the course of like 15 years, and I just didn't pick it up every once in a while. And like I learned a new trick every couple of years. And before I knew it, I had a whole repertoire. And that happens, with a bunch of things for a lot of people. And, there are different ways you can tackle your goals. One is through the sprint, one of them is through the marathon. I think the sprint can be very effective, but you cannot sprint the whole marathon.
Yeah. Um, Actually, now that we're going with this analogy, I think there's two ways. I think this could just be our way of framing some of the heuristics. So one of them for me was just instead of running, just be still, take a moment, really just take the time to breathe, reset. Why am I doing this? Why did I want to do a marathon in the first place? Well, told myself it was going to be off the bucket list. I wanted to get in shape. All of those reasons. Remind yourself, and of course, part of being still also meditation, as we know, such a great kind of guide in these types of situations. So being still. The other one is to run in a different direction. You don't want to run backwards, right? But taking the time to take a little detour and go work on your book, work on some creative project of yours, I think it's just a great reminder to ourselves that once again, the marathon's somewhere we want to go. That doesn't mean that it's the main show. That's just a symbol of what we're looking to achieve. Starting 10 businesses and being this world-class champ. Well, what is it all in kind of, what are you trying to accomplish? What is it in progress towards? And whatever that is, it's an important reminder to yourself, hey, is it so I can do more of this painting and the stuff that's right in front of me? Well, remind yourself, okay, well, I'm actually working so I can do this all the time, but let me go get a dose of that so I remember how good that feels. So I think those are really good ones. I don't, I'm I'm hesitant to say run backwards, but part of me also like has this thought that like if you're pushing yourself too hard going one way, I guess travel is a good example. Instead of pushing yourself like to go towards this path and feeling like you have to put all this work towards getting to the finish line, take a step back. And to me, that was just doing a mini trip. It's like, yeah, realistically, is this going to slow me down? Maybe a little bit, but it's also going to give me a different perspective. Let me take a step back and see the full forest from the trees. Of course, renew my energy, things like that. So I guess really stepping back a little bit on that lap and just like getting some water, rehydrating. Those would be my three kind of ideas to beat burnout.
I think that's really powerful. Rest is a big part of what you're saying, what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So this was a tough one.
Well, I think it all ties back to this idea of evaluating what your purpose is and what your goals are. And there's a book called Lean Startup, which suddenly popped into my mind as we were talking about this. And the Lean Startup is essentially a way for new startups to accelerate as quickly as possible towards being successful. And the protocol for accelerating in Lean Startup is effectively following gradient descent. And it's a 3-step protocol. Step 1, choose a direction. Step 2, accelerate towards that direction. Step 3, stop, assess, and if need be, pivot. Pivot is choose a direction. So it's a cycle. You pivot, accelerate, assess. Pivot, accelerate, assess. You pivot, accelerate, assess. That process is gradient descent. But you can use that in your day-to-day life to maximize your whatever goal that may be. Gradient descent, the beautiful thing about it is that it is an abstraction that can be used in anything, as far as I can tell. And so you can say, okay, am I making progress towards this thing? No? Okay, let me choose something else. Let me change directions. Okay. And then whenever you change directions, just go with that. But during the assessment stage, you can take that moment to rest, because a part of it is, okay, maybe going full force on new projects is not a good strategy. Maybe I should rest or take it slow. But the heuristic here is what I'm saying is you have to assess, move forward in your direction you're interested in, and then pivot if need be. But the assessment is really key. And I don't think we do that enough, where we stop and assess if what we're doing makes sense and is good for our body and is good for our health. It's good for our mental health, etc.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think we left the audience with some good stuff. As always, we have a question we like to ask. And man, I'm so curious how many people believe in burnout. I've seen a lot of kind of research or people that just say like, hey, to avoid it and be completely unaware or like not believe in it is a good way to approach things. So I'm curious how many people subscribe to that camp. But if we were to ask one of our typical rhetorical questions, I'm trying to think what pops into my mind.
What's your next best thought?
I guess, what did you do last time you were burnt out? How did you try to solve it? Because, of course, this could be a chronic problem, right? I've faced burnout multiple times. It wasn't just once in my life. And every stage of my life required like a different kind of solution. It's not always the same one. To your point, there's healthy habits you can always take, and they all kind of ensure those periods happen way longer than normal. It's like getting a cramp on the marathon. You can extend how long it takes for you to get the next cramp if you take the right preventative actions. But that's mine. When was the last time you were burnt out? how'd you address it?